Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, everybody. I'm excited to be here with you again this week, talking about what your kid wants you to know. Oh my gosh, what a scintillating idea, right? Like, if I could just ask my kid, like, what do you need from me? Or what are you hiding in there? Or what do I not know about you that I need to know? Or, like those are those sort of like unanswerable questions that I think all parents grapple with. Like, we want to be able to be who our kids need us to be. And in having that desire, it almost necessitates us like knowing things that are like unknowable. And I want to talk today about that. Like, what does your kid want you to know? And I'm going to talk about that in the context of using the Enneagram to decode your kiddo. Okay. And you know me, I always start with a confession. Um, but before I dive into that, the next couple of weeks of podcast episodes are going to be centered around the Enneagram. And the reason why is because in April, I'm recording this in late February right now to be going out in March. And in April, I'm going to be leading an amazing workshop in person, which I cannot tell you how excited I am about doing that in person, right here in Denver, called the Living Enneagram, your personal roadmap. And you can learn more about it. I created a bit.ly link for it, so it's easy to remember. It's bit.ly/living Enneagram. You can also obviously just find it by going to my website and it'll pop right up on there, and kaplanparentcoach.com. But I'm so excited to lead that workshop, not just because it's in person, although I love that. I like the idea of almost kind of giving you guys a little mini retreat experience. I'll know that I run a retreat every year in October up in northern Michigan on a lake, right when the colors are changing. It is beautiful and it's spectacular. And it's just like 5 days of just diving deep and having a blast and eating amazing food and getting massages and having a personal chef. And it's amazing. Well, being able to do a workshop in person gives me this opportunity to sort of give you a little mini retreat. It's not going to be for 5 days, it's just going to be for a morning, but at least you're going to get a little taste of the type of self-discovery and connection you can experience when we're working together in person, really connecting with each other and having a dialogue and doing it for more than 30 minutes, right? Like doing it for a few hours together. And actually, when I run my retreat, that's really the time that we spend doing coaching work and deep self exploration work. It's not all day because I mean, that you get us to a saturation point with this stuff. Even me, an Enneatype 1, I still get saturated with self development work. So we, do this stuff in the morning, couple hours in the morning during the retreat. And then afterwards, it's like, let's go have lunch. Let's go visit a winery. Let's, go shopping, go explore the town, go on a hike, whatever. So, in a crazy way, this morning workshop is really similar to what it's like to do one of those coaching mornings at the retreat. So it gives you a little taste of that. So I love that idea about doing it. But you know me, I love to go deep. So that's the thing that I'm most excited about doing this workshop for you. So if you're interested in that experience of having me for real in the flesh in front of you, getting to give you a hug and everything, I encourage you to check that out. Space is limited, so don't hesitate to book it when you check your calendar and realize you can do it. But so today, I want to talk about that idea of what your kid really wants you to know and decoding our kids using the Enneagram. And my confession for you today is really about that question that I get all the time from clients, which is why, whether they're actually directly saying, why is my kid acting this way? Or we're just spending our coaching session trying to uncover that answer. And, it's so normal, natural for us to have that curiosity. I can give you an example. Actually, right now, I'm working with a dad who um, his kiddo is using lots of like sort of self-deprecating language and stuff like that. And we've talked a lot about how important it is for us to remain neutral and non-reactive when our kids say upsetting things like that. Not because this doesn't matter that our kids are saying those things, but because in order for us to figure out what's really going on and give our kids what they need to have us not be part of the problem. We need to be non reactive and neutral in order to kind of uncover that layer and expose what's underneath. But, understandably, this dad is having a really hard time doing that. Well, because he's really worried. Like, well, is he saying this stuff because he's just trying to get a rise out of me? Or is he saying it because he really believes it? And if he really believes it, like, what am I going to do? And why? Why? How did he ever come up with these terrible ideas about himself? Like, why would he think these things about himself and all of this stuff? And you can hear me saying why, like over and over again. Like, why is my kid acting this way? And if the reason why he's acting this way is because he truly is grappling with like negative self concept, then why? Why is he grappling with that? Why would he think poorly about himself? And did I do something to cause this? And all of those things. But you can see this is such a great example of how us getting attached to that why question stops us from being the person that our kid needs us to be in order to actually answer that why question, but more importantly, to give them what they need to move through this. So, my confession for you today is that when I get that why question, I sometimes am a little bit too dismissive of it. I dispel that worry by focusing on the need for that calm response, no matter what the why is. And it's not wrong. It's totally true that that's what happens and that is what is needed. But the truth is that knowing why our kids do stuff is really helpful when it is possible. So I often say, you know, it's great if you do know it. It's not necessary for you to know it because always, like I said, our kids need that calm, neutral response. But when we do know why, it is so helpful. And I have, shied away from, you know, going into that, let's figure out why um arena with my clients for a myriad of reasons. Number one is if we are really trying to move the eight ball and get, from a place where parents are showing up in a way that exacerbates a situation to parents showing up in a way that helps the situation, getting mired in that why question can really slow down that process. And then there's lots of other reasons too. I mean, the real reason is because like it might not even be an answerable question, right? But the truth is that sometimes it is an answerable question, especially if kids are acting out a classic example of their developmental stage, or when your kid is older, it's easier to answer that why question because their personality is emerging and we can start to see, like, oh, sure, like maybe you have a kiddo who's, a button pusher and an antagonizer, and that's just part of their behavior. Well, it's not going to be surprising that they're doing that at school, right? Or they're the class clown, for example. Like that why question is answerable. And when, when we can answer that question, it helps. Like imagine if I were able to give this dad a 100% clear, for sure answer to his question, why is my son doing this? It might be so much easier for him to stay present and calm and non-reactive if I could give him that answer, or if he could give himself that answer, or if his kid could give him that answer. And that's what I mean when I say what your kid really wants you to know. And the truth is that I had to kind of confront this sort of tug of war, two sides of the coin situation recently myself. Like I sit here and tell my clients, like, it doesn't matter why. The bottom line is you need to manage your emotions and your nervous system so that you can stay calm with your kiddo. Meanwhile, I am struggling with one of my kiddos. So my kids are old enough. Right now, as I'm recording this, their ages are 20, 18, 15, and 10. In like a month, that 15 and 10 are going to become 16 and 11. You get the idea. So my older three children, I already know what their Enneatypes are. I understand their personalities, not just from living with them for 15 to 20 years, but also because in my work as a coach and in my work as an Enneagram coach, I have learned so much about all of the 9 personality types on the Enneagram and all of those instinctual overlays that go with those types and everything. And so when my kiddo is antagonistic, I don't just know, like, oh, yeah, that's his personality. So, of course, he's button pushing right now. I know, oh, he is a 6, and 6s really need to test in order to feel safe and secure in the world. So when this kid is pushing buttons, it is because he is trying to reassure himself that the world makes sense and it is solid and dependable. That doesn't mean it's okay that he's doing that. It doesn't mean that he doesn't get a consequence for doing that, but it allows me so much to stay calm. So while I'm telling my clients, like, you don't need to know why to stay calm, I am totally relying on the fact that I do know why to help me stay calm. And I got confronted with that in a big way because my youngest kiddo, I don't know his Enneatype yet. And I'm starting to get some inklings. There's a couple of types that I could say with pretty high certainty he's probably not, but I really don't know what his type is. And he has started doing some behaviors that I don't get. I don't understand why he's doing this stuff. Like, why do we have to have the argument all the time? I swear to God, this kid could be like an absolutely incredibly successful lawyer tomorrow. I think his ability to rope anyone into an argument and refusal to look at his, you know, complicity in any situation and instantaneous defensiveness and all of these things. It's not like those aren't behaviors I know how to parent around. I've been doing it for 20 years. But gosh, it would be so great if I understood what is the internal mechanism that leads him to show up this way. Because when I do know someone's Enneatype, it helps me so much in giving them not just the generic, here's the boundary, here's the consequence, but also something specific that I know that type needs. And my example with my 6 kiddo is a really apt one. Knowing that I am reliable and dependable allows him to relax in his antagonistic behavior. Well, that's not something that I would, in general, generically not necessarily know for every single person who's antagonizing, right? But for this kid, I know that's what he needs. So I have to, eat a little bit of a slice of humble pie here and say, you know what, I'm right there with you to all my clients, as I always am. I am not just teaching and coaching around parenting. I am also parenting myself and, being confronted with this very natural, normal human desire to know why. So with younger kids, we really can't know what their Enneatype is until they get older. Oftentimes, when you finally do know your kid's Enneatype and you look back and you're like, oh, yeah, a lot of that stuff, now I get it, But in the moment, they're just little sort of, peeks into an incomplete puzzle. So it's not quite as clear. But that doesn't mean that we can't use the Enneagram to parent younger kids, which I have talked about in previous episodes. And once we know our kids' Enneatype, holy cow, like our ability to not just parent them well, but get them, connect with them, help them feel connected to you. Holy cow. I wish I could just kind of transmit to all of you the level of intimacy and connection and closeness that is available to you using this tool. And you know me, I'm a very loquacious person, but sometimes words fail me when I start talking about the true intense and deep emotions that come up around this like sacred duty that we all are undertaking in parenting. But I wanted to give you a few examples today of my kids and their Enneatypes. And I always give the caveat that my kids have given me permission to talk about them and stuff like that. So I have four kiddos. My oldest is 20, like I said before, and he is an Enneatype 1, which is also my type, which I can tell you is very interesting to see the interplay of the two of us with each other. Then my second kiddo, my 18-year-old is a 6, which I already talked about a little bit. My 15, soon to be 16-year-old is an Enneatype 4. And like I said, my youngest, who's almost 11, I still don't know. So I'm going to kind of go through this and give you just a few examples. This is just a very, very like surface level, cursory, sort of glimpse. But like I said, if this is interesting to you, I encourage you, if you're in the Denver area, to come to the Living Enneagram workshop in April. And also, by the way, this is the kind of tool that I use in my coaching, not my only tool. And I certainly have clients who are not interested in the Enneagram at all. And we just never use it. And that's totally fine. But I am also a certified Enneagram coach. So when my clients are aligned and energized by the Enneagram, we definitely do bring it to bear. And it is really exciting. So my oldest kiddo, Elijah, is an Enneatype 1. And what that looks like, especially when we ones are in our egos and maybe not feeling super um, in our highest self, we become very judgmental, criticizing, we could be angry, we become self-righteous. Well, why is that? Because we have an incredible North Star value of wrong and right and morality. And that means that we also have an inability to allow ourselves to be bad or wrong. We we start to have this feeling of weighty responsibility for the integrity of ourselves and the integrity around us. Um, and how I parent Elijah, because I understand that, and I understand it probably better than most because I'm living the dream myself slash nightmare myself as a one. First of all, I really need to lean into trust that this is his life's work. So when I watch him be critical of his siblings or create distance between him and his siblings by being judgmental or self-righteous with them, I really have to remember that this is not something I can parent out of him, and that he is going to be working on this for his entire life. This isn't just like a bad habit he has, it's a fundamental building block of who he is. But I can still hold boundaries and take care of myself. When he becomes self righteous with me, which he does, I can, hold a boundary, walk away, take space, not subject myself to that treatment. And I can help him on this like current stepping stone that he is on. I can give him permission to allow his anger healthily, which is a huge challenge for ones. And it's a really big part of their life's work. Allowing him to be angry instead of transmuting that into like being better than everybody else. And being really thoughtful of accidentally being too critical of him, because as critical and judgmental as ones are to the world around them, they are twice as critical and judgmental of themselves because they have that internalizing relationship with their emotions. So, you have to be really thoughtful when you're giving out criticism to a one. They want it, but they need some love and care when receiving it for sure. And then also modeling my own growth as a one. I'm modeling living in the gray a little bit more than the black and white. challenging him on ideas about black and white and right and wrong. I need to be very upright in my behavior. If you have a one in your life and you appear to lack integrity to them, you will cease to have any authority over them at all, because following you or being compliant to you might accidentally lead them to go astray and become someone who lacks integrity. So if you want to actually be an influential person in a one's life, you need to live an upright way and model that for that person, so they know that it's safe to follow you, that you will be leading them in the direction of righteousness. So I need to really hold myself to that standard of being, deserving of his respect um and followship, for lack of a better word. Um, Also, ones really need purpose to pursue something. So, helping my kiddo see the purpose behind the things that he needs to do will help him actually move mountains. If it seems frivolous to him, he won't do it, because frivolity is, first of all, a waste of time to ones, but also could once again lead us astray. So, we really need to have things be connected to a purpose. Um, and then also, all us ones really need to lighten up. So when I'm working with Elijah, I try to just remind him, you know, that life is a lark and it is important to have that levity and stuff like that. So that's a great example of how, you know, I can parent my kid according to his Enneatype and become just like ridiculously fine-tuned to who he is. Um, River is a 6, which means his behaviors are often, he gets very future trippy. Sixes can be very anxious. He's very skeptical of the world around them. Sometimes sixes are called the loyal skeptic. They really are like ride or die with the people they love, but they also don't really trust anything. It's very interesting. Um, Place to be. There's some like negativity that comes with that skepticism or pessimism, that antagonistic behavior I was talking about before, because they're testing. They don't trust anything. They need to prove it to themselves over and over and over again. Well, why is that? That mistrust plus reliance combination. Imagine if you were dependent on something that you also were sure was going to let you down or wasn't actually dependable. That is the impossible dilemma that a 6 lives in all the time. This like marriage of mistrust and reliance at the same time. Well, what a tortuous situation to be in. Kind of like the torture of a 1 is having to be, you know, above reproach, but that's not possible. Like this idea of like holding ourselves to an unattainable standard, that's the torture chamber of a 1. The torture chamber of a 6 is being reliant on something you are sure is not reliable. And that is, the state that sixes find themselves in, and that lays the foundation for all of their personal work, right? So they need that they have that feeling that they need to test people and systems. They need to know all of that stuff so that they're not going to be caught off guard. They need to protect themselves from bad news or disaster. So you can see why that like skepticism, negativity, antagonistic behavior, and that future tripping kind of stuff, and all makes sense, right? Oh my gosh, if you're a 6 out there, you might be hearing me and being like, oh yeah, I make sense. Well, isn't it great to have that feeling about our kids? Like, oh my gosh, my kid makes sense. No wonder he's constantly antagonizing our kids. And then right now he's waiting to hear back from schools. And it's like just everything is like the sky is falling and nothing's going to work out and all that stuff for college. And it allows me to tap into sources of patience that I didn't even know I possessed with him. So parenting River means that I need to once again be upright for him, because he needs me to be dependable, and I need to be present. The most important thing that I have learned in parenting River is that the way to get to something with him is never through the front door, because of that mistrust thing. If you're too direct with him, he senses attack. You really need to be more like quietly in his presence and become this like constant presence in his life. And then he will open up to him, to me, So, I let him open up to me and I have to be in that patient space while he like grapples with all of those worries and concerns. So that's another great example. Let's see what I want to say about Gigi. So Gigi is a 4. And what that looks like from the outside sometimes is a lot of like dramatic roller coastery emotions. She catastrophizes a lot. She can get stuck in like self-pity or melancholy. She can withdraw sometimes. She definitely has like a woe is me story. She also can be very self-absorbed and like wanting all the attention, not really thinking about other people. And she gets very easily offended. Like, if, for example, if she were listening to this podcast right now, probably she would feel very deeply hurt, even though I would have to say that Gigi is one of the most self aware people I know in this world. And I know that she knows everything that I just said. And we've talked about it a million times, and she knows all of that stuff. Well, but why would she behave this way that I'm describing? Well, 4s have a really extreme value of significance, and they believe that they need to, in order to feel connected and safe in the world, they need to be acknowledged and valued. So, at the same time, they feel like there might be something wrong with them. I had a session with a 4 yesterday where who another very self-aware 4, and she's like, being a 4, the impossible like sort of contradiction of a 4 is, we simultaneously believe we're the best in the world and the worst in the world. There's something terribly, terribly wrong with me, but I'm also really, really special and I'm kind of a big deal. That is the experience of a 4. And you can see how all of these types that I've been talking about, there's this like impossible contradiction inside of us that makes it tortuous sometimes to be in that position with our egos. And that's Gigi's impossible, tortuous situation. So they often see themselves as misunderstood or other than everybody else, but they desperately want to belong while not losing their individuality. So parenting Gigi involves a ton of validation and acknowledgement above everything else that exists in the world. Like, she needs to feel seen and heard and understood before anything else is possible with her. So, in a crazy way, even though all of these personality traits that we were talking about, the egoic personality traits we were talking about, are painful for her to talk about, talking about them helps her feel understood and seen and significant and individual and all of those things. And any boundaries that I want to set with Gigi, any sort of direction that I want to give her, any advice that I would love to impart to her, it all has to happen after she feels 100% gotten. And it has to be her idea. She has to be the one who comes up with it. Otherwise, it feels like she's copying somebody. And that is a terrible feeling for a 4. I remember when Gigi was, let's see, maybe in 4th grade or something like that. She had a lot of friends who were younger than she was at that time. And she was, I think it was like an art class or something at school. And she came up with this way of doing her art project. And the next day, all of these younger kids were like, ooh, cool idea. And they did it exactly the same way as Gigi did. That whole like imitation is a form of flattery thing was not what was going on in Gigi's mind. She just felt like she had gone from being this one in a million to a dime a dozen. And she lost her mind. Knowing that she's a 4 helped me so much in talking to her teachers, in helping her navigate that, instead of just giving her all the consequences that she needed for mistreating her classmates. I also first needed to fully understand, like, why would she do that in the first place? And just giving her a lecture about imitation is a form of flattery, it was not going to work with Gigi. Imitation does not feel like flattery to a 4. It feels like your identity is being stolen. So of course she was going to be reactive and, maybe misbehave a little bit towards her friends. Doesn't mean she didn't get a consequence, but that understanding piece allowed me to think of the right consequence for her. It allowed me to be really understanding and help her to calm her nervous system before she got the consequence, all of those things. And that brings me to Sky, who, like I said before, I don't know what his type is, but still the Enneagram helps me so much with him. Because, first of all, I know me. My Enneatype helps me understand why his behaviors trigger me and why some of his behaviors don't bother me at all. Secondly, I know the Enneagram and his behaviors sometimes look like an 8, look like a 4, look like a 7, or look like a 1. And I know that when he's being, the challenger, like that type 8, what he needs from me is firm, direct, powerful leadership. And when he's in that 4 space, like Gigi, he needs that validation. When he's in that 7 place of just joy and fun and, sort of like beautiful baby butterfly place, he needs things to be unfettered and joyful. And he needs to be given that freedom to explore and follow his bliss, you know, and when he's in a 1, like me and Elijah, he needs help softening that black and white and forgiving himself and being less critical of himself and not beating himself up. So even though I don't know exactly what type of on the Enneagram, what point on the Enneagram he's going to end up, setting up shop for the rest of his life, I still know how to respond to a kid or a human who is showing up on each of these points in the Enneagram. So to take it back to that original question, what does your child want you to know? They want you to know them. And of course, there's a million ways to understand and get to know your child. You don't need to only use the Enneagram, or you don't need to use the Enneagram at all. But in my personal opinion, the Enneagram decodes us and our kids in magical ways, even if we don't know what the type is yet. So this is kind of a little example of how we can use that Enneagram to really just up level our parenting and our relationships in general. I haven't even talked yet about how the Enneagram has like saved my marriage a million times. But, you know, this tool has helped me up level myself, my parenting, my marriage, every relationship I have in this world in ways that I don't think could even be measured. And I actually think that if you were to talk to my kids, they would agree with me on that one. Maybe not River, but he's a counterphobic 6, so it would be very dangerous for him to concede on that point psychologically. We could go down that rabbit hole another day. I hope this has been helpful for you guys. If you are interested in joining me for this workshop in April, go to my website and you'll see that pop up right away, or just follow the bit.ly link I told you before, bit.ly/living Enneagram. I cannot wait to see you. And like I said, if you're not in Denver and you can't make it to the workshop, or you are in Denver and you can't make it to the workshop, just remember that Enneagram work is available for you with me always. It does not have to be in a workshop space. Come to a free consultation and we'll talk about it. You can also set up just an Enneagram typing sessions with me, one-off Enneagram coaching sessions with me. It's all there for you. And I can't wait to see you soon in whatever capacity that looks like. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long, or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.